Hey y'all, how y'all doing today? Hope you guys are doing all right. I got a big message for you guys, building off of the last video that I made about the window of tolerance. So today we're going to talk about the hyperarousal. As you can see, the symbol is a volcano exploding. I just took some CBD to kind of like slow me down with this message. So just, be patient as I try to convey the message here. So I'm going to go ahead and share a bit of my testimony regarding anger and how I kind of overcame it, and what are some techniques that I use if I'm starting to feel myself in hyperarousal. So for starters, I was like a troubled youth. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a good stretch. Oh, get my little robe on, or my red earrings, to honor the anger. So yeah, I was like a bit of a troubled youth, very angry kid. A lot of the anger started pretty early on for me. Some people would refer to me as like a ticking time bomb. Okay, violence was pretty normal in my family structure. It was talked about often. Threats were used often. I seen a lot of violence at a very young age, all the way up until I left those environments. So, yeah, the violence was, it was a language that I knew. It was how I was operating the world. And anger was a bit of a way that I protected myself. Okay. When I experienced a lot of the traumas that I went through, I was not able to talk about these things. So I bottled it in and I held those things in. And I might get emotional when I talk about these things, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this. It is what it is. Like, I'm a human, and we feel emotions. But, like back what I was saying. So I go through a lot of trauma when I was a kid, and I wasn't able to talk to nobody about it. I had to keep a lot of secrets, and I had to carry the burden that I was being abused, and there just wasn't there wasn't really anybody that I could talk to. So I just held it in. I didn't write about it. I didn't do anything. I held it in. And there were times that I couldn't hold it in anymore, and it would come out like a volcano. The anger would. And I would hurt other people as a result. I've been in fights. I've done a lot of things. I've been in juvie as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and for domestic violence. And yeah, I was pretty angry. And like I was saying, anger was a bit of a defense for me. I knew that if I held on a certain level of anger, that I'll be able to protect myself better. I didn't have people to protect me. The people who were supposed to protect me were often the ones that were abusing me. So as a result, I had to learn how to defend myself. And I learned very early on that if I held on to the anger, that level of anger would take over, and I would be able to fight back. I would be able to defend myself. So that's a big part of the reason why I started having blackouts. And a blackout is basically like I would lose consciousness and I would just tear things up. Okay, I would tear it up. And violence was pretty normal at my school as well. Okay, like starting in middle school, high school, there's a lot of fights. I seen a lot of fights. I heard a lot of cussing. Like, it was pretty normal to be in a violent environment. I was at the hand of a lot of violence. Violence was very prevalent in my life, even after I left the environments that I grew up in. That was just kind of what I carried. Is I was the type of kid that I felt like I didn't have nothing to lose, and it showed through violence. So, like I was saying, anger was a bit of a way that I was defending myself. And I knew that if I kept a certain level of anger, that I would be able to defend myself. But unfortunately, when you hold on to anger like that, it really can make you sick, and it hurts people. And it doesn't just hurt other people, but it hurts you too. I wasn't able to connect with kids the way that other kids were connecting. I had to put on personalities, fake personalities that were not even me, in order to be friends with other people, because the real me was really, really angry. And the real me wanted to inflict violence on others because of how mad I was. So, I'm like, where am I going with this? I remember when I was a kid and it was on my way to juvie, and the police officer that was bringing me in, he was the first person that I had opened up to about some of the things that I was dealing with. Because he was like, girl, you have been crying for hours straight, and I know something else is going on here, like what's going on with you. And he was the first person that I really felt genuinely cared. And then because he was an officer, I was like, maybe he could do something about it. But he really couldn't. And that's a tough situation. That's why my heart goes out to a lot of the youth, because yeah, you could call the police, and maybe CPS gets involved, and in a happy-go-lucky perfect world, they'll be placed in a better home, right? But that's not the reality for a lot of kids. For a lot of kids, they end up being put in homes that are even worse off. They end up being abused, exploited, used. I met a lot of kids in the foster system that really had a lot of severe abuse inflicted upon them. So it was kind of like I had to accept the fact that that's just a reality that I was going to be living in for a while. And so I opened up to the officer, and I quickly realized like this wasn't a path that I wanted to take. I didn't want to hurt other people. I didn't want to hurt myself. It wasn't me at the end of the day. Like, I didn't feel like that was me. I felt like that was who other people wanted me to be. And a lot of people, they used to be like, oh yeah, like, you crazy, she's crazy. Like, I was called crazy a lot, and that's why I don't care, man. Like, people call me crazy, it's like, okay, yeah, I did some crazy shit when I was a kid. I really did, and it's not something I'm proud of or anything, but I'm also not ashamed of it either, because I full-heartedly understand where I was coming from when I was a child. And if I was to see another kid, doing those things, I can understand where they're coming from. You know what I'm saying? And I ended up going to anger management when I was a kid. And it was about the dumbest thing I done ever experienced, okay? I sat in this room with this guy, and he was like asking me stupid questions. Like, it was a requirement by the state that I had to go to anger management. He was asking me dumb questions like, what's your favorite color, and all these things. And I could tell that he really didn't care. He barely looked at me, and so it wasn't helpful. It just made things worse. And something that I learned along the way is that there's always something underneath the anger. And throughout like counseling and therapy, they used to teach me a lot to like not to suppress it. Okay, they would be like, take this pill, or whatever. Like, that's just what was always offered to me, was pills. But it wasn't until like a few years ago, like 3 years, I don't know, I found a therapist who also was a bit of a spiritual teacher to me, and she told me to lean into it. And that was the first time that I had stopped pushing my anger somewhere, and I just allowed my anger to be there. And I think that's important for a lot of people, is to realize that anger shows up as a teacher, and it will continue to show up until you learn the lesson along with the anger. The anger is trying to show you something. Mom, I ran out of battery. Hold on one second. My bad, y'all. So like I was saying, anger is a teacher that will continue to show up until you learn the lesson along with it. And anger is trying to teach you something. Okay, I was feeling angry because I was hurt and betrayed. And what I have found is that anger shows up more in the heart and in the root, okay? It's more of like a survival, and it affects the way that you're feeling about yourself and about others. And it's hard for love to enter your heart if you are so filled with anger. So, yes, there was a point in my life where I realized and I really started to feel very angry, especially after remembering a lot of the things that I went through as a kid. I was pissed off. And pissed off is to say, like, that's an understatement. I was mad as hell. And I was in a group for sexual assault and sexual abuse. And, we talked a lot about anger because we were angry, okay? Certain violations are just, any violation will make you angry. So to have a sexual violation, especially as a child, that is something that you will be angry about if you experience that. And if you are not taught how to release that anger, then you will suffer with it. And that anger will show up in big ways until you handle it. So, like I was saying, when I was when I had a therapist who was also a bit of a spiritual teacher of mine, she told me to lean into my anger. She said, I think you just need to feel angry. And you have to think about a lot of these youth, and myself included when I was a kid. You're told so much not to be angry. You're told so much that something's wrong with you with feeling like that, or responding that way, or reacting that way. But the thing is this a bit of anger management from my experience is having to just allow myself to be that angry. And I realized how truly angry I was, and it was terrifying. I felt like my anger was the sharpest blade there was. Like if a Japanese knife smith like handed you a brand new samurai sword and just the graze of your finger, it like damn near cut your finger in half. Like I was so angry at the things that I experienced, and it was hurting me to have that level of anger. It was hurting my muscles, it was hurting my sleep. I was having violent dreams, and even when I was younger, when I was holding in that anger, I would have so many violent dreams, and it was like I really couldn't get a hold on it anymore. Because the thing about anger is if you continuously ignore what it was that made you angry, it will take over until you really realize what is going on. And like I said, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just an individual who has overcome these things, and I'm telling you from experience. And I try to tell people, like, we're the experts because we're going through it. Okay, a therapist who has gone through these things and who can teach you their ways of going about it, that's great, that's good. But if you have a therapist that has never experienced these things before, and all they have done was heard stories, testimonies, read books, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that they're not effective in their treatments. I'm not saying that they're not effective, period. I'm just saying that when you speak to someone who has actually gone through it and overcome it, it's quite different. And that's why the therapist I had was so effective, because I could tell that with her story and her testimony, she went through those things and she has overcome, similar things. It's not anything that's like exacted by any means, but similar. Okay? And beforehand, it was not like that. I had many therapists that had never gone through even a fraction of the things that I went through, and yet they would still continuously try to be there for me and try to counsel me and things like that, but they were not equipped for the job. And that's something that you have to keep in mind as you're healing these things, is you need to make sure that who you're talking to is equipped, because they're not all. Okay? So like I said, leaning into anger. There was this time when I was very in a hyper arousal state, dealing with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, grief, the weight of the world on my shoulders, and my nerves was shot, boy, I tell you what. And my neighbor, man, they were just blaring their music all day. And I could barely sleep, because I had a little child. And it was just all day. The music was so loud, it was shaking our whole apartment. And I just wanted to go in there and beat their fucking ass, man. I'm telling you, I thought about it. I wanted to. And, I'm like, I can't do this. This is not my life no more. Like, I have a child I have to look out for. I can't be getting locked up. I can't be doing these things. So, I took the opportunity and I grabbed a metal bat and I went down the stairs and I found a fence and I started whipping that bat on the fence as hard as I could. And I was just cussing, and I was like, you know what, if the police rolled up, I'll tell them, yeah, I'm mad as hell, okay? What do you want me to do? You want me to go into my house and go be mad? We need to allow people in society go be mad. Like, if you need to go be mad over there. Creating space, a safe space for you to be mad is healthy, okay? And that's something that I learned, is like, you have to create space for it. Okay, when you get into this red zone, it's not safe. It's really not. You're out of control. And so something that I learned is I had to be like, hey, I need space. I gotta create this space. And if I feel like I need to destroy something, I'll go find something to destroy. And be very selective on it. Maybe it's something from childhood and I'm just mad about childhood. So I'll grab that thing from childhood and I'll just tear it up, burn it, whatever will allow me to feel that release of anger. There was a time that I put my foot through a whole laptop. My laptop was associated with a lot of things in my past. And, I didn't want it anymore. And I just kept looking at it and I was mad as hell. And I just grabbed it and I slammed it on the ground and I stomped through it. And my husband, God bless his soul, was like, oh my God, like, like, girl, you was, yeah, I don't think he's thinking I was crazy or nothing, but it was scary for him, and that's the thing, is like, you know, it is scary to be that level of angry, but it's even scarier for a person to have to go through some of these traumas that I went through. And I think that that's kind of reflected sometimes. So, like I said, creating space for that anger is important and allowing yourself to feel it. But at the same time, acknowledging that you can't really be sitting in that forever. You really can't, because all it does is it's hurting you. And you have to find a way to really release that anger so that you can move forward. And, I'm happy to say I'm not an angry person anymore. And, yeah, anger happens. It's a natural thing, but underneath all that anger was a lot of feelings of betrayal and a lot of feelings of disappointment and a lot of feelings of being scared and a lot of feelings of, just sadness and grief. And I think that sometimes we have to acknowledge that anger in itself is an adrenal reaction. And when we hurt, think about like when you go to the gym and you work on the machine, you feel that burn and then your heart starts racing and your blood is all, circulating very well and things like that. It's a similar thing, okay? An emotional pain will still cause an adrenal response. And so that's what this hyperarousal is an adrenal response. And that being said, creating space for yourself to allow that. And the analogy that I think about is like a pop. Like if you shake up a Mountain Dew and you know that if you open it, all the liquid will fly out, okay? So you have to open it little bits at a time. But sometimes you ever get them pops where it's like no matter what you do, it still just keep overflowing. Sometimes you have to overflow, okay? And that's why I really, as me as a person, I'm very like athletic. I get into a lot of physical activities because I do tend to be up here more in the red and the orange zones if I'm stressed. Okay, if I'm overly stressed. If I'm overly stressed, I don't normally go down here. I normally go up here because, in a way, like I said, anger to me has been a bit of a defense mechanism. And I know that that's for a lot of people. Okay, just pay attention to people that you see that's angry. A lot of times they may not want anybody close to them because of the fear. And I'm not saying everybody, okay? I'm just kind of saying generally, like, they may not want nobody close to them because they've been hurt. And it's unfortunate. And that's why I'm passing this knowledge through and this wisdom through about creating space for you to be angry and to release that. This isn't one of those ones that you just do yoga poses through. It's really not. This is one that's like a wildfire. And sometimes you can't really control wildfires. Sometimes you have to let them burn themselves out. You can do your best to, manage it. But all in all, that fire just got to burn until it burns out. Okay? So, here are some things that kind of helped me through that, like a breathing technique. Let me share with you a breathing technique. So a lot of times when people be like freaking out and people be like, take a deep breath. Like, I'm sorry, but that don't cut it. It don't cut it. It might for some people, because these things aren't very black and white, but I'll tell you one breath that does work very well when you are mad as hell. Think about when a dog is, if you all ever seen a dog that, experienced fireworks or something, and you see them panting. Okay, so that's kind of, this breath is like a pant, where you go. This is called the fire breath. You can do it with your mouth open too. Okay? And just notice what's happening with your body. Like right now, I'm noticing my body's getting really warm when I'm doing that. Okay, that's like leaning into the flame. Okay, sometimes you have to you gotta lean in, like I said, and create space for it. Push-ups, shadow boxing, getting your hands up and getting the air. There's been times where I grabbed my pillow and I was just as hard as I can. I'm like, yo, son of a, just like go crazy with it. Like if somebody walked into the room, they would be like, damn, what the hell is going on in here? And they'll shut the door. Like you have to lean into it. Okay, don't be afraid of it. Okay, create the space for it and know that you will get through that. And you will be like so much more free after releasing all that pressure. Ask yourself, why I got so much pressure? Well, maybe because you've been ingrained and indoctrinated and programmed to not be angry. But nowadays, a lot of people just be angry. They don't even know why they're mad. That's why you got to get to the root of it. When I was doing a lot of my trauma therapy and stuff, it all began with a little meditation that I had laying in my bed. And I asked my body, what have you been through that is making you this angry? And within minutes, my body told me what happened. And from then on, it was telling me all kinds of things that happened. And these messages were coming straight to my brain. Your body is highly intelligent. And if you ask it what you've been through, it will tell you. Okay? But, my heart goes out to like all the youth that are dealing with anger and they don't have an outlet and they don't have people that they can talk to about what the hell it is that they're going on. People talk about things at school like don't bully each other, don't bully each other, and all this shit. But at the end of the day, they go home and then they're being abused. So, like, what do you expect? Yeah, they're gonna trash the bathroom. Yeah, they're gonna go burn that dumpster. They're gonna go punch that kid in the face. They don't know any other way to release that. These things have to be taught to people. You have to teach people how to regulate themselves. You have to teach your children how to regulate themselves. You have to teach youth how to regulate themselves. Otherwise, you have a bunch of people growing up abusing each other, putting their hands on each other, and feeling out of control, feeling afraid of themselves. And there's a certain thing that happens if you cross that line with anger and you're assaulting. And I'm not saying that, I'm a strong, wholehearted believer in redemption. But there are certain things when people lean too hard into the anger and they're not getting to the root of it and they are becoming perpetrators because they have so much anger built up. Okay? So that's what I'm saying, is that if you don't find a way to release it, it can make your life very dark. And it's very hard to redeem yourself from certain actions if you are not able to get a handle on your anger. I have seen it happen to other people. I myself have had to deal with a lot of guilt and shame around things that I have done when I was angry. And there are people who have done way worse things that live their life in shame and in darkness, and they're not allowing themselves to come to the light because they are very ashamed of the things that they have done. And what I am trying to convey here is that prevention is the best route when it comes to these things. And it starts in childhood, it starts in the adolescence and the youth. We have to teach the youth how to regulate themselves, and we have to create space for them to be pissed off. Because there's a lot of things to be angry about when you're a young, youth growing up, and you're facing adversity after adversity after adversity after adversity after adversity. Okay? So, I just want to send love to you as you are taking in this message. I encourage you to sit with it for a while and really reflect on anger, how anger has affected your life, how anger may be affecting you, and what are some ways that you can do to release it. Okay, there is no black and white. There is no, this is just solved like this. It took me many, many years to come to a point. EMDR helped. When I did EMDR, it allowed that pressure valve to open up little bits here and there, and I worked through it until I got to a point where I was like, oh my God. Because it's exhausting to carry that much anger. But boy, I tell you what, it feels good when you let that shit go. So, I send much love to you, my angry birds. I care about you. I see you. I hear you. I understand you. And I wish you the absolute best on your journey to redeeming yourself and releasing yourself from the chains of anger and learning the lessons that anger is teaching you. All right. I'll talk to you guys next time.